Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this presentation explanation of what your child will be entering into next year at Petoskey Middle School. We're excited for the transition. It's always fun to greet new students. You know, they're elementary age students coming in, and then they leave high school age. So it's fun for us to see that transition during these pretty formative years. So my name is John Wilcox. I am currently the acting superintendent of Petoskey Schools, but my permanent position is the middle school principal, job that I definitely love. So Mr. Purcell, I will let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Jason Purcell. I'm currently the acting principal at Petoskey Middle School. I like John's methodology of delivery there, but my permanent position is the assistant principal at Petoskey Middle School. This is my third year at Petoskey Middle School. The previous 25 years were spent as a high school math teacher. These are our office secretaries. These are the two women that you will be talking to on the phone probably a lot over the next 3 years when you're calling in to excuse your son or daughter from being absent, or you need some information. Mrs. Burris is our attendance secretary, and Mrs. Lease deals a little bit more with the teacher aspect, the budgeting, athletics, etc. But they are both very well equipped to answer pretty much any question that you might have as it comes up.
I'm Dana Penny. I'm one of the middle school counselors here. There are two of us, as you can see. Before Mrs. Kelly introduces herself, I was just going to explain for some of you, the middle school or the school counselor is a new position, and you might be wondering what we do. We will meet in sixth grade homerooms right away and talk to the kids about, why we're here and how we're here to help them. But basically we do, anything from scheduling to standardized testing. But we see students every day. We're in the lunchroom every day. We're in the halls. We help support our principals with a role of behavior issues with conflict resolutions. But most importantly, we're here for emotional support for your children. Often we run groups, new student groups in the fall. We do a grief group every year. We try to do anxiety, stress groups. A lot of conflict resolutions as kids at this age are trying to figure out how to navigate these years, and they grow so much, like John said, from 6 to 8. But basically we're here, we're a soft, safe place for students to seek support. So that's really our role.
Hi, my name is Angie Kelly. I'm the other school counselor. And we also have wellness program staff. Mrs. Streelman, she is our behavioral health therapist. In addition to the two school counselors, we have Mrs. Streelman. She's employed by Alcona, but she's housed in our building. And many of you might be familiar with this because there are Alcona therapists in the elementary buildings. Alcona counseling is billed through insurance, and these counselors provide more in-depth therapy plan and meet with students at scheduled times in the school day. We also have a school nurse, Mrs. Jakeway. She splits her time between the middle school and the high school.
And just so everyone is aware, we are in the process of hiring a third Alcona person, a second behavioral health therapist, and that person will be split between the high school and the middle school. So the middle school will essentially have 1.5 behavioral health therapists. This started with a grant that we received 6 years ago that put behavioral health therapists in our buildings, and it definitely provided a lot of support for students. So it's pretty awesome that we're able to do this. So the purpose of this meeting, kind of how we laid it out, was what does it look like during the day? What will your child experience on a day-to-day basis at Petoskey Middle School? And then at the end, we wanted to clarify some differences between elementary school and middle school, just to kind of make sure you understand how, because we communicate differently. We don't have Thursday folders, and I'll get into that later. But I just want to make sure you're aware of that. If and when you come into the middle school, these are two things that you will see. The one on the logo on the left, the full value agreement. I'm guessing you've seen that on elementary schools and on elementary school communications. That the full value agreement is basically our social norms that we agree to abide by. All students, adults, everyone. These are what this is how we behave. We work as a team. We speak up, and we're safe. And so we constantly integrate that into just about every class where we talk about it in the lunchroom. It's definitely ingrained in what we do and who we are. The full value agreement was actually, it's a district-wide thing now, but it actually was founded at the middle school back in the early 1980s. So it's been a part of our building for a long time, and definitely integrated to just about everything, including our expectations, and that's the Northman Drive. So different from social norms, how we expect students to behave, the Northman Drive are a set of skills that we hope to help develop in our students before they enter high school. So we want students going to the high school that are determined, respectful, have integrity, know how to use their voice, and are empathetic. So that's, we came up with that Northman Drive because that's our address, is 801 Northman Drive. So we kind of a play on words, but that's been pretty, we intentionally teach those skills, especially during homeroom, but again, also embedded throughout the day. So I wanted to give a brief explanation of those two things because they're two very important parts of our school building. So now we'll go through what the course of a day looks like.
So drop off and pick up at the middle school. One thing to understand is Petoskey Middle School is the main hub for buses. So every student that rides a bus to Petoskey schools is going to come to the middle school bus loop. And so in the morning, that means students come there, elementary students might come there and change buses and get onto a specific bus that's going to take them to Ottawa or Lincoln. So every student kind of comes through the middle school for drop off and pick up in terms of riding a bus. Obviously, with the high school being across the street from us and the middle school right there, we've got somewhere in the area of about 1,600 kids that are coming into that main hub. So it is busy in the morning. But if we look at the next slide, you get a pretty good understanding about how the drop off and pickup works here. You see the bus loop is a little bit off to the right in this current diagram. So the yellow is where you will drop off and pick up your student. So as we drop off or pick up, we try and stay on the right side of that lane as we go through. Preferably the drop off and pick up are happening closer to the main entry doors there. You can't quite see the 8th grade entryway door, but you see the sidewalk kind of going off to the top right there. So that is the area, if your student is not riding a bus, if you're bringing them to school, you'll be coming in that driveway right there, following the yellow line to drop off. And then if you drop off or pick up, then you can kind of pull into the left lane to move out of traffic. We do ask, and this is always something we're constantly kind of working on, but if you look at that red area there, we don't want cars parking there, stopping there, letting students out there. Obviously that just becomes a little bit of a safety concern if students getting dropped off in the left lane and kind of having to go through that traffic a little bit. So try to keep your vehicle in the right lane as you go through that loop to do the drop off and pick up. So as students arrive, what happens is we've got three main entries. We've got an 8th grade entryway, we've got a 7th grade entryway, and then we've got a 6th grade entryway. And one of the things, when your students all came up to the middle school last week, we tried to really stress to them that there's a lot of separation between the grade levels in our building. So 6th graders do not get a whole lot of chance to mingle with the 7th graders or the 8th graders. If you look at this diagram here, you can kind of see the bus loop going through the bottom part of that. And then 6th graders, once they get dropped off or they get off the bus, they're going to go over to that 6th grade entryway right there. And then they will spend pretty much the first 4 hours of their day in that 6th grade wing. They will go on to some exploratory classes a little after that. We'll show you that in a bit. So in terms of arrival and getting dropped off, this is that 6th grade entryway is where your student will enter the building. By and large, that's also where they will exit the building at the end of the day, because at the end of the 6th hour, whatever that elective class is for them, they'll be heading back to their lockers and then exiting the building from there. So it keeps our 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders a little bit separated, which is something we're always trying to shoot for. Going on to our next slide, I believe I'm handing it off to Mrs. Penny at this point.
So the doors open at 7:55. Typically students go to their lockers, and then there's kind of a little bit of a delay before homeroom. Kind of go to the next slide. While we're talking about lockers, I'm sure you know from your children, it is one of the #1 stressors for incoming 6th graders. They're so worried about their locks. We assure them every teacher can help. We're all out in that hallway. We have keys. We can practice, they're going to practice it in 5th grade. They'll practice at open houses. They'll practice in homeroom when they get here. But one exciting thing about their locker, they can decorate them. We say they can decorate the inside, must be removable and school appropriate. And then our student council decorates the outside for everything students are involved in. They make a little emblem with your child's name on it for everything they're involved in. So that's exciting to see as the year goes on. One thing we stress with kids is do not share your locker combination, because your best friend today might not be tomorrow. And it keeps everything safe if just you're the only one that knows your locker com. Students can bring their phones to school, but they need to stay in the locker, not in their back pocket, not in their sweatshirt. They need to be in the locker. So that's another reason not to share the combination. So that's safe. So as I said, there's homeroom doesn't formally begin until 8:15. So it's about 20 minutes that the kids have some options to do before homeroom. The media center's open. They can work on homework. They can check out books. There's something called the Drive Hive, where they can get academic help before school. They can go there during school as well. It's where they take, if they missed a day and have to make up a test, that's staffed with academic aides. Also before homeroom, there's breakfast. They can grab that in the cafeteria, and that's supervised, all these different areas in the building are supervised. And then a couple of fun things, a couple times a year are the AMIM, that's the morning intramural competitions. The kids make teams and name their teams. There's they do brackets with basketball, volleyball. There's a red dot challenge, dodgeball, that kind of stuff. So that's a fun one. And then after that 20 minutes, they're kind of settled into their day, and they begin in homeroom at 8:15 in their seats ready to go. Every day we have a student come over the PA and say the pledge. We all stand and say that together. It's a time to take attendance. A big thing in 6th grade, all our 6th graders are given planners that have the handbook, and then it has the, like a planner you would have. And every day in homeroom, every homeroom teacher has projected what they're doing that day. And the kids are to write it in their planner, a test coming up on Friday, or remember the can drive, ends next week, whatever it is, they're staying organized that way. Sometimes there's a news program they watch, not every day. Some days they do things where they work on Northman Drive and the full value agreement, like group initiatives that have kind of problem solving, teamwork, kind of working in that social emotional learning and soft skills. There's a weekly topic that teachers teach in their own authentic way that works for them and their kids, where they're covering those skills such as honesty, understanding others, goal setting, things like that. So that's kind of takes us up through homeroom. And I think,
Okay, after homeroom, the sixth graders will go through their first, second, third, and fourth hours are all their academic classes, their math, language arts, science, and social studies classes are first through fourth hour. Then their fifth and sixth hours will be exploratory classes. There are 5 minutes between each classes, and all of their classes are 55 or 60 minutes, but close to an hour. All sixth graders are placed into one of 2 pods. So it essentially will divide the sixth grade into 2 groups. Each group is taught by 4 teachers. So one teacher who's going to teach that pod math, one science teacher, a language arts, and a social studies will all teach to the same 4 teachers to the same pod of students. Your student will travel with their pod through those first 4 academic hours of the day, the math, English, social studies, and science classes. When we place students into pods, we work really hard to balance numbers of students from different elementaries and different factors, like try to balance out the numbers of boys and girls, things like that. We feel like the pod system is really helpful in that transition from elementary to middle school. Sixth grade students will be changing classes every hour. That's new for them, but they're still with that same group of students for the majority of the day. And so kind of familiar with that smaller group they're used to in elementary. And they have that core group of 4 teachers that is working with them, all working together with them. Students still get the opportunity to see students who are not in their pod. They see those students at lunch, during passing time, and in 5th and 6th hour, possibly in their exploratory classes. Here is one of our 6th grade pods. So there's a teacher for each subject would teach to that pod. And this is the other pod next year. We also have some co-teachers who work with the 6th grade students, Ms. Hopkins, Mrs. Fays, and Mrs. Zamaron. And then lunchtime. Lunch is 30 minutes long for students. They break in the middle of their 3rd hour. So they start 3rd hour, take a little break take the 30-minute break for lunch, and go back to 3rd hour and finish. All 6th graders eat together, and they're only eating with 6th graders at that time. So they're not mingling with 7th or 8th graders. They're just with their group. This is also a time where they can see people who are not in their pod. They do not have to sit with their homerooms or their pods. They can choose their seats and where they're sitting. Weather permitting, we take the students outside each day when they're finished eating, so they get a little short recess, usually 5 to 10 minutes. We meet with the 6th graders on the first day of school to kind of go over the rules and procedures and what lunch is going to look like for them that day, so that we can remind them that morning and kind of walk through it with them, and we help them as they get used to it, so they don't have to stress about lunch.
After lunch, as Mrs. Kelly said, typically they're going to go back and finish their 3rd hour class and then their 4th hour class, and then it is time for exploratory classes. So all of our 6th grade students end the day 5th hour and 6th hour in their exploratory classes. So that typically is going to go from 1:15 until 2:10, and then 6th hour is 2:15 until 3:10. Our goal each year is to get each student through all of the exploratory classes. If a student is in band, that does restrict them a little bit more, because band is a year-long course that's going to fill, for example, their 5th hour all year. So that student then, during their 6th hour, would be able to take some exploratory classes. So they would be able to take 4 exploratory classes. Each of them are typically 1 marking period long, and we have 4 marking periods. PE is the only other exception, that it's a longer than 1 marking period. PE is a semester-long class. So we always do our best to try and get the students through all of those exploratory classes as 6th graders and then as 7th graders. And then when they get to 8th grade, it kind of becomes more of a quote unquote elective. So the students have a little bit more choice. We want them to explore all of these different things to see what they like and what they don't like and what their strengths are. And then in 8th grade, they can spend some more time choosing those classes and taking some more of those classes from there. So some of our elective teachers, our band instructors, Mr. Harder, Mr. Wilson, our 3rd band instructor. We are currently going through the interview process and the selection process for that. So that should be coming out soon. Mr. Bray is our technology education teacher. So he teaches one of the classes is basically a wood shop class type of class. Mrs. Kabursky teaches life skills, where students do some cooking, they do some art type projects, sewing, etc. And then Mrs. Stevens will be joining us next year as an art and music teacher. In the physical education classroom, we've got Mr. Rosignol and Mrs. Carlson. And then at 3:10, that bell rings, school is over for the day. However, for many of our students, the day does not end there. We have a lot of activities after school. You can see by this list, that is one thing that people are always so impressed with is the number of different activities that we offer. Whether it's athletics or a science club, robotics we've had year in and year out, on and off. There's just so many different options for kids to get involved. And that was one thing last week when I met with the incoming 6th graders when they came over to the middle school is get involved. This is the time in your academic career to find out what you like. We really encourage kids to get involved with as many different after school activities as they possibly can. It's a great time to get out and try new things. And then after school study lab, is this me or are we up to Dana now? I think this is it, sorry. So after school study lab, great time for your student if they need just some extra support. Pretty much every day after school, Monday through Thursday, we have academic aides in the media center. We also have teachers now that have been helping to staff that after school study lab. So there's teachers and aides, there's several adults in there to help. On any given day, there might be 5 kids in there. Some days there's 20 kids in there, just depending on kind of what's going on. So they can go there just to work on their homework. If they need some extra help in math or they need some extra help writing their English paper, there's always somebody in there that will be available to them. So encourage your student if they need a little bit of extra support on something. They don't need to sign up, they can just show up. And then there's a sign in and sign out lab or a sheet so that we know that they've been there. And now I'm going to hand it off to Mrs. Payne.
Okay, so some possible 6th grade activities, things they've done in the past. As we know, we hear all the time, COVID changed so much. So these are what they're hoping to do again. They start in the fall with a candy sale. It's the only fundraiser 6th grade does. And it's for the entire 6th grade. And it raises the money for the field trips and grade level activities. They're hoping again to start the fall fling at Northern Lights. I think this year they're doing kind of a spring fling there because they missed it in the fall. In the winter, they do a cool snowshoeing excursion. And then they always end the year with a day camp / field trip for their 6th graders. So hopefully those will all be back next year.
So that was kind of what you can expect your child to experience most days at the middle school, and kind of encompassing this part. How's the middle school different from elementary? It's quite a bit different. We have marking periods and semesters, 2 semesters. Each of those semesters is 2 marking periods, so there's 4 marking periods. We do pretty much everything by marking period. As Mr. Purcell said, there's 2 exceptions to that in terms of exploratories. Band is all 4 quarters and PE is 2 quarters. But other than that, most of the electives are a quarter. Each class, each core academic class, the grades reset at each quarter. So we just do everything by quarters. At the end of each quarter, we do send out a report card. We send out progress reports. We utilize PowerSchool, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that's a good way to keep updated with your child's grades. You can see all of the assignments and what grade they got in every assignment. You can have it set to email you every day if you want. You can have it set to email you once a week what your child's grade is. There's all kinds of possibilities. So that's definitely a difference. Parent-teacher conferences. Hopefully we can get back to these being in person rather than Zoom as they've been in the past 2 years. And typically we do the first opportunity for parent-teacher conferences is mid-November, and then we do another one. It's usually early February for that second semester. So the tentative plan is to have a time slot, and parents can sign up to either attend that parent-teacher conference via Zoom or in person if we're allowed, or a combination of the 2, whatever is most convenient for the parent. So that's what we're looking at for parent-teacher conferences. One of the biggest differences is just the sheer size of the middle school. In your elementary schools, there's a secretary and there's a principal, and we've added, and there's an Alcona therapist, and we've added some ancillary staff, but in the middle school, we've got 2 secretaries, we've got 2 principals. We now have school counselors that didn't exist in the past. So how do you know who to contact? It's not as simple as it was in the elementary where you just call the main office. Of course you can, and they will direct you. But if you have the best way to think about it is what's the closest to the source. If you have a concern or an idea or want to help, if it's academic, start with the classroom teacher. If there's concerns that rise to Mr. Purcell or our first question is always, did you have a conversation with the teacher, a seek to understand conversation with the teacher? So always start closest to the source. If there's a social emotional concern, peer conflict is pretty common with this age group. They're growing and friend groups change. They have a friend group from elementary school, and sometimes that dissipates or changes. So if you have a social emotional concern, the school counselors, Mrs. Penny or Mrs. Kelly, are your go-to people for that, or any kind of scheduling concerns. If there's behavior concerns, then that's where it's Mr. Purcell or myself. Any questions about anything throughout the course of a day, your child's homeroom teacher is your point of contact for that. So they will have a different teacher for, as Mrs. Kelly explained earlier, they're going to have a different teacher for science, math, social studies, English, and then the exploratories. If there's a question about a specific class, obviously you can go to that. If it's a math question, you go to the math teacher. But if there's a question about a field trip, your go-to person is the homeroom teacher. So that's probably your number one contact in a lot of situations is the homeroom teacher. You can think of them like your child's classroom teacher in the past. So if you had a question in elementary school, you contacted the teacher, your point of contact at the middle school is the homeroom teacher. I hope that makes sense. And then obviously attendance call our attendance line or call the main line at, 348-2150, and you can leave a message there. So how do we communicate? This is one of the biggest differences between elementary and middle school. I said at the beginning that we don't have Thursday folders or Friday folders like you've experienced in the past, but we do communicate with you. We do put our information out there. Probably the best, truest source of information is our webpage. We work pretty hard to keep that up to date. So the calendar that's on there, we work to keep that really accurate. Teacher contact information, we work to keep that accurate. Class descriptions, daily announcements are put on the webpage. So if you have a question about, when can my child sign up for volleyball? Well, check the daily announcements. That's probably the best place to find that. We also have a school newsletter that goes out that we try to put information in that goes out once a month. That's written by our office. I generally write the newsletters. And so those are more overarching things that are important for the whole school. You will get emails from your child's homeroom teacher about pod or grade level specific information as well. Emails and phone calls, always feel free to call or email. I don't know how other industries are, but education, I feel like we are inundated with emails, and that's probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of teachers. I do ask that you give them time to respond to the emails though. Usually we, ask for 24 hours for us to get back to you if there's a phone call or an email, but please communicate with us. If there's an issue, speak up, just like what we ask kids to do. We're in this to help you. We're in this, it's a team. I always talk about how education is a three-legged stool. It's the school, it's the parent, and it's the kid. And it's that three-legged stool all working together that makes it work. So please talk to us. Let us help. Some other things that we offer, keep an eye out for hot topics for parents of teens. I highly recommend you at least check those out. I think there's a link on the district homepage under the parent resources where some of those are, they're recorded, and we're going to get back to doing those in person, but we try to pick topics that are important to parents of teens, like screen time. Like, how do you have a tough conversation with your kid? How do you know your kid's okay? What are some, all of those kind of things. We try to address those and help parents. So just keep an eye out for those. Generally, we have those 4 or 5 times throughout the year, and they're designed specifically for parents of teens. And it's not just us doing them. It's a collaboration between a lot of different agencies, of which Petoskey Public Schools is one of them. We also have a middle school and parent alliance. It's sort of like a PTO, but that middle school and parent alliance is important for us to seek feedback from parents and also get the good news out. That's kind of the focus. So if you are interested in that, you can email me and I'll put you on an email list where you'll get information about when those meetings are and what the topics covered are. Or if you want more information, feel free to give me a call. I think I covered most everything on this. Oh, Schoology and Power School. So this is another really big difference. Schoology is our learning management system. All of our teachers utilize it. And it's where you can go to find out what your kid is doing. When's the next test? What assignments are they, usually teachers put notes up there. There's a link directly to an assignment that they've got to do. That's kind of the go-to place for into the future for things that are coming up. I mean, we also utilize Power School, and Power School is if you're looking for how they did on something. So great, how did they do on their last test? Well, that's where you can find Power School or utilize Power School to find that information. So more information to come. We'll send a mailing at the beginning of the school year, late August, that includes a lot of information on how to log into Schoology and how to log into PowerSchool. Dana or Jason, did I miss anything on this, or Angie you can think of?
No, I guess the one thing I might add with PowerSchool is kind of like what Mr. Wilcox was saying about the emails, be patient. Sometimes students are very guilty of when they turn an assignment in, third hour. Sometimes they'll email their teacher that night, why is it not in PowerSchool yet? So typically teachers, a lot of them do a lot of grading in the evening and on weekends really. So I always tell parents, maybe check that once a week. That Sunday night, usually teachers have gotten everything updated for the previous week by Sunday night. So that's usually a good time to check your student to see whether they've got any missing assignments at that point.
On here, it says Facebook and Twitter. To be completely honest, I don't remember the last time I tweeted anything about middle school. And Facebook, we do have a Facebook page. I encourage you to like that, follow it, whatever the right term is. And we try to share fun stuff there. Good, what's getting the good news out again is the purpose of our Facebook page. It's not meant to be the source of information. If you're looking for the source of information, go to our webpage. That's the best place to find that information. Or like I said before, reach out to your child's homeroom teacher. So website, I hope you all know how to get there. Like I said this earlier, and I'll say it again, we do work hard to make sure that is up to date. And I think, Mr. Purcell, this is you.
Accurate contact information. So student verification form will be mailed with student schedules in August. So look for that in August at some point where you're getting your students' schedule that will have their homeroom teacher on it, their class schedule as we go through the rest of the day, or as they go through the rest of their day. It's important that we have accurate and complete information. So please mark any changes directly on the form, return it to the middle school main office. If contact information does change during the school year, just call Mrs. Burris or Mrs. Least in the main office, and they will be able to update that in PowerSchool so that we have emergency contact names and numbers, any medical information that we need to be aware of, allergies, asthma, etc., co-parenting information, and your email addresses. That is a lot of our communication does come from email. So having current email addresses is important for us as we go through. And finally, what's next? So school ends next Friday, the 10th. Students are off for the rest of the summer. And then we've got two things that you and your students may be interested in, and that is basically a self-guided tour. We offer two of those. One is June 22nd, so just about a week and a half after we get out of school. And then the other one is August 30th, which is the week before we come back to school in the fall. If you want to go to both of them, you certainly could do that. In June, you would not have your student schedule yet. So you'd be able to just kind of do a very relaxed self-guided tour. And then in August, you'll have their schedule. So you may be able to kind of go through their day with them and look at first hour and homeroom, etc. So it's a good time to just come in, find out where those classrooms are, take a look at the 6th grade wing, walk through the exploratory wing, the non-academic wing of the building, down to the PE or down to band room, etc. Teachers are not in the building that day, so it's just kind of a chance for you to walk around and for your student to get more comfortable with the facility. Just so we don't have everybody there at one time, we've kind of got it broken up on what elementary school you're coming from. So Sheridan is at 10 a.m., Lincoln is at 11 a.m., Ottawa at 12 o'clock, and then Central and any others if we've got incoming new students, things like that, at 1 o'clock. And then schedules with locker numbers and combinations will be sent out in August. Remind your student not to panic about their locker combination. That is obviously a big area of concern. I think Mrs. Penny talked about that. I think every sixth grade teacher has a locker key. So if a student is struggling with it, they can help them get it open. They spend a lot of time working with them. They practice their locker combinations with them during homeroom that first week of school, make sure everybody's kind of getting the hang of it. So parent power school information will come in that mailing, as Mr. Wilcox alluded to. You'll have a welcome letter with a supplies list for your student, and then the verification form, which needs to be returned. So we've got updated contact information. Tentatively, September 1st, we've got our middle school open house scheduled, and then September 6th, the first Tuesday after Labor Day, we are back to school.
So just to expand on that, if your child is nervous about middle school, or you have the feeling that your child is nervous about middle school, I would suggest coming in on those self-guided tour dates, just for nothing else, to see the building. So it's not this unknown over the whole summer. You know, they'll at least have something to think about when you're talking to them about school in the fall. The times for each school, those aren't in stone. So if you're a Sheridan parent, but you can't come until 1 o'clock, that's fine. It's not a big deal. We just did that to try to break up the crowd a little bit. The middle school.
I was just gonna say, we try to have one of the counselors on those days. So one of us will be here and you're welcome to stop in and we can answer any questions and
Yep.
show you anything you can't find. And go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay. That August 30th self-guided tour, by that time, you will have your child's schedule and locker combination. So if you want to come in with them and practice their locker, that's the perfect time to do that. So just know that the purpose of those. And then the open house, that's when, again, it's the building's open. It's usually 4:30 to 6, if I remember right. And you can just come in, and that's when all the teachers are there. So you can introduce yourself as teachers and get to know them a little bit before the school year starts. So with that, I am going to